My aunt accidentally sent me a video of my family calling me a pathetic son, while I'd been paying for their utilities for years. He should be grateful. They laughed. I stayed silent until the next payment was due. I, 35M, always believed loyalty ran deeper than blood. That belief guided every transfer I made, every bill I settled, every quiet sacrifice I chose not to mention when my own budget groaned. For nearly a decade, I'd handled the gas, water, and internet for the house where my parents, an aunt, and a cousin still lived. It started the month I landed my first real job after college loans and sleepless nights. Back then, the arrangement felt temporary, a stopgap while Dad's business recovered and Mom's health evened out. It never ended. The payments happened automatically, 3 drafts on the 15th, so predictably, I barely noticed the sums leave my account. I still visited on weekends, still mowed their lawn, still carried crates of discount groceries into the dim kitchen because Mom worried about how it looked if they used assistance programs. I told myself it was filial duty. I told myself all families whispered frustrations now and then, that gratitude, like love, seldom sounded loud. Everything changed on a rainy Tuesday when my phone pinged at 11:07 p.m. I had just returned from a double shift and dropped onto the couch, shoes still on, rainwater bleeding into the carpet. A video file, 43 seconds long, waited in my messages. The sender was my aunt. No text accompanied it. I assumed she wanted me to troubleshoot a computer glitch, again, so I turned up the volume and pressed play, already rehearsing a patient response. The clip opened with my family gathered around the living room coffee table. An empty cookie tin served as makeshift ashtray. The television glowed in the background. They were laughing. My aunt's voice cut through first as she waved her phone like a baton, saying she couldn't believe how pathetic I still was, a grown man clinging to the role of obedient son. She claimed I should be paying more, that real success meant footing the mortgage next. My cousin chimed in, mocking how grateful I appeared whenever Mom praised my cooking. Then Dad leaned back, smirking, and said I ought to consider myself lucky to be needed at all, because otherwise I was just another mid-level drone in a forgettable city. The laughter kept rising, overlapping insults, each one a jagged pebble flung at the version of me that still believed they cared. Near the end, Mom reminded the group the utility drafts were due in a week, so everyone could relax. Lights would stay on, hot water would keep running, thanks to our human ATM. The final frame froze on her lifting a teacup in a mock toast before the screen went dark. For 10 stunned seconds, I sat motionless, thumb hovering over replay, lungs refusing to draw a full breath. At first I tried to rationalize. Maybe they'd been drinking. Maybe someone had stitched random sentences together. But the cheap painting behind the couch confirmed the setting, and the timestamp aligned with a family game night I'd skipped because overtime beckoned. The footage was real, the voices unmistakable. A tremor crawled from my jaw to my fingertips. I set the phone down, afraid I might throw it. In the humid silence, I replayed old memories. Childhood birthdays where Dad promised the world but delivered scoldings. Mom cautioning me not to brag at school about scholarships because boasting drew envy. My aunt preaching that family meant everything. Right before borrowing rent money, she never repaid. I felt the ground beneath those memories shift, revealing holes I'd chosen not to see. Sleep never came. By dawn, I'd crafted a plan, not from rage alone but from a cold, precise determination I hadn't felt since final exams. I decided I wouldn't confront them immediately. Explosions burn hot and fast, but I wanted aftershocks. I wanted change measured in months, not minutes. The utility drafts provided the perfect lever. First, I logged into my bank, canceled the automatic payments, and rerouted the funds into a new high-yield account. Next, I dug out every paper bill I'd saved since moving into my apartment. Each one bore my parents' address because the original accounts were still in Dad's name. That detail would prove useful later. Then I marked my calendar. 15 days until the next gas bill was due, 21 for water, 29 for internet. I'd let the dominoes fall in order. The following week I visited as usual, carrying a bag of oranges Mom liked. Nobody mentioned the video, confirming they didn't realize it had been sent. My aunt greeted me warmly, oblivious to the silent storm gathering behind my eyes. Mom chatted about her garden, Dad complained about taxes, my cousin asked to borrow my streaming passwords. I responded politely, heart pounding, cataloging every casual request. When Mom reminded me the bills were almost due, I nodded and said I'd take care of it, as always. She sighed in relief, exactly as I predicted. Back home I rehearsed scenarios. If they called the utility companies, they'd hear balances were fine until due dates passed. If they checked the online portals, they'd notice nothing because Dad never set up digital access. They were complacent, cocooned by my reliability. That complacency was the real target of my revenge. Update 1. On the 16th, the gas company sent its automated shut-off notice. I waited, phone within reach, but silence stretched until evening. The house's old furnace probably hadn't kicked in yet. Early spring nights were mild. I almost doubted myself, wondered if karma would punish me instead. At 2:13 a.m. my phone buzzed. Mom explained the stove wouldn't light, and the water from the tap felt lukewarm. She sounded confused rather than angry, asking if I had changed credit cards. I told her a work project had delayed me, and I'd look into it after my shift. She thanked me and hung up, none the wiser. The next day she called again, this time frantic because a technician demanded payment before restoring service. I replied calmly that payments were tight, and I'd need receipts before sending anything. She hesitated, receipts required effort, then said she'd call back. Update 2. 5 days later the water company followed suit. Mom's voicemail cracked as she asked if I was okay. Dad left a gruffer message implying I was neglecting responsibilities. I spent that afternoon alone at a lakeside park, phone on silent, absorbing the quiet. When dusk settled, I sent a group text saying unexpected expenses meant I'd have to pause support for a month. The typing indicator on their end flashed and vanished, until eventually Dad replied that I was placing them in hardship. My aunt wrote privately, insisting I reconsider because family comes first. I scrolled back to the video and replayed her laughter, then powered down the phone. By morning Mom messaged again, more subdued, mentioning she'd tried washing dishes with bottled water and reminding me of her fragile health. The guilt jabbed, but the memory of being called pathetic steadied my resolve. I offered to email her a budgeting template so they could manage utilities temporarily. She didn't respond. Update 3. The blackout they dreaded most arrived on the 29th, when their internet died mid-evening. Within minutes my cousin texted from a neighbor's Wi-Fi, accusing me of sabotage. He said Mom's blood pressure spiked because the smart thermostat went offline and Dad couldn't file tax forms. I replied that thermostats work manually and libraries offer computers. He unleashed a string of insults before going silent. That night Dad rang, voice low and weary. He admitted they'd taken me for granted, claimed the family loved me, insisted past jokes were harmless. He never referenced the video, so I decided the time had come. I told him I'd seen footage where they mocked me, that I now understood exactly how my contributions were valued. He exhaled heavily, then tried to blame my aunt for editing comments out of context. I cut him off, explaining the full recording was clear enough. I added that respect is measured by actions, not words, and mine would be equally clear going forward. He asked what I wanted. I answered that from now on the household would manage its own bills. I offered to email instructions for online portals, stressing I'd transfer account ownership back into Dad's name so he could handle late fees. I said I'd also need repayment for the last 12 months, itemized statements ready for them to confirm, because debts, like memories, shouldn't be one-sided. His shock curdled into anger. He accused me of abandoning family. I reminded him abandonment is what you feel when the person you depend on finally sees the truth. Weeks passed. The utilities returned after they scrambled for funds, borrowing from extended relatives I rarely met. Gossip claimed Mom sold a bracelet she inherited. My aunt texted sporadically, alternating between apologies and barbs. I answered none. The repayment never arrived. I didn't expect it would. My goal wasn't money, it was balance. One humid afternoon, I drove to the house, wanting closure. The lawn I once trimmed had grown ankle-high. Paint peeled near the front porch. Mom spotted my car and hurried outside, face pale. She asked why I'd come. I told her I wanted to retrieve childhood boxes from the attic. She nodded, leading me inside without a word. The living room felt smaller, as though laughter had drained oxygen from it. A stack of shut-off notices lay on the coffee table, weighted by the same cookie tin ashtray. While I carried boxes to the trunk, Dad stepped onto the porch. He didn't speak, but his expression blended regret and resentment. I remembered every soccer match he missed, every birthday he forgot, every scolding delivered in lieu of praise, yet some part of me still craved reconciliation. I asked if he was well. He shrugged and said they'd manage. For the first time I believed him, not because he sounded confident, but because I no longer felt responsible. That night, I unpacked the attic boxes in my apartment. Inside one I found an old-school essay where teenage me pledged to buy Mom a beach house and Dad a fishing boat. I read the words, smiling at the boy who wrote them. He hadn't understood that gifts don't repair cracks in a foundation. They simply decorate the fissures. Final update. It's been 11 months. The family pays its own utilities now, though the internet remains a prepaid plan my cousin grumbles about on social media. Occasionally Mom sends pictures of her garden. I respond with thumbs-up emojis, neither warm nor cold. Dad hasn't called since that porch encounter. My aunt, however, tries often. She forwards inspirational quotes about forgiveness, perhaps forgetting she once documented her own cruelty. I archive every message without reply. Revenge didn't bring fireworks. It brought a quiet realignment of gravity. The obligations that once pulled me into orbit around that house loosened, letting me spin freely for the first time. On weekends, I drive past the coast, windows down, radio low, bank account intact. Guilt still whispers, but now it has competition, the steady voice reminding me that self-respect is not selfish. If anyone reading this wonders whether silent giving guarantees love, let my story answer. Generosity offered as tribute becomes expectation. Gratitude evaporates in its heat. Sometimes the most loving act, for yourself and even for them, is to turn off the flow and let everyone learn where true responsibility begins.